I was a history buff. I loved history, and I had read about, Camelot with Kennedy and all the trysts. And so I started thinking about, well, the president, a lot of careers are tied to the president. So if he goes down, a lot of people are going to go down. So the stakes are high. And what would people do? How far would they go to make sure that that man never failed? So I came up with an idea. Okay, I'm going to put into a tryst and something really bad is going to happen. How is that going to work? And I thought of, well, if I'm going to make the president, everybody around him have really low morals, let me have somebody with really high morals. Wouldn't it be really cool to have a criminal with high morals? So voila, there was Luther Whitney. And I thought, I'm going to take this guy. He's going to be a career criminal. He's never hurt anybody. He plans his crimes out meticulously. Nobody's there. He goes in, gets his stuff, gets out, and that's what he does. It's a business for him. He's not this violent thief. And of course, things go awry. And it was really important for me because at the outset, this is my first novel, and I've got to make sure I've got it right. And you also have to get it right by how are the readers going to look at this character and accept them, because he's going to carry the action in the moral imperative for half a novel. He's a criminal. He steals from people. So how do I have readers rooting for this guy? Well, I did it a couple of ways. One, he only stole from really rich people. They've got insurance. Who cares, right? Secondly, I put him into this locker room where he could see out and see this president brutalizing this woman. So all the readers were on his shoulder, looking out, watching this happen, and they were having the same reaction he did. He was horrified. He was repulsed. He wanted to go out and help the woman if he could. He was having the same reaction all the readers did. Boom, there's the bond. Luther Whitney, despite the fact that he steals from people, this guy's a good guy. He's like me. I'm going to hang with him for as long as he's in this book. So those two, issues sort of sit down pat, and I sort of just sculpt his backstory, sculpt his, the story going forward with him, and then put into his paces in the novel. I got to know Luther Whitney really well as we were going forward to dig into his psyche and understand what he would do and what he wouldn't do, how far he would go and how far he wouldn't go, and where were weak spots. So the pacing for me was critical. I wanted to write a book where I didn't want to write any pieces where I knew people were just going to skip over it. It was just too much useless information. I call it writer's bragging, humble brag, where they've done a lot of research, they pop it in there because they have to, because they worked on it and they're not going to waste that, So I tried to leave all of that out. My process was I always wanted the characters to be moving forward. I never wanted them to be sitting idle in neutral in the parking lot, and then I send them off in drive or send them in reverse. I always wanted the action going forward. In some ways, it's sort of like a film. You got, 2 hours to make your point. Every scene has to have 2 reasons to be in there, not just one. You have to know how you're going to get in and how you're going to get out. So I cut a lot of the extraneous material that I knew the readers didn't need, weren't going to read, were going to skip over and not enjoy. And when I got down to the bare bones of it, the pace was really, really quick. And that's how I try to, do most of my books these days. I've been on a lot of film sets, all the stuff that I've had done over the years. And his was the calmest film set I've ever been on in my life. There was nothing, talk about slow. It was slow and fast. He would slow to build up and do a scene, and he would do it in one take or at most 2 and then move on. I've never seen that on a film set in my life. He spoke quietly. You could barely hear the guy. It was like his team knew what he was going to do or say before he did or said it. And then methodically plotted it out, got the shot. He was a director. He had to set the shot up. Shot's ready to go. He puts on his costume, gets in front of the camera, does his bit, takes the costume off, gets behind the camera, checks the shot. Okay, move on to the next one. So it was professionalism at its zenith. And I really respected that and got a lot out of being, a part of that process. Yeah, when they called and told me he was going to do it, I called like everybody I'd ever known in my whole life. It's like my first grade school teacher, Mrs. Dugan. Yeah, it's David. You're never going to believe what's happened to me. So it was pretty amazing. All the planets were in alignment. My film project after that, none of them has been nearly as smooth as that first one. But that was a rock star cast. It was a great film. The first act of that film is one of the most compelling I've ever seen, even though it's based on my own stuff. It's just a rocket ship with heart. You get the character really quickly, and the pace is nonstop, and you come out of that first act and you're just soaked in sweat.